Hello everyone. This is a Locals exclusive video for those who donate at least $10,000 per month. We hope you enjoy it. Alright, so the goal here is come to an agreement even if we have to compromise a little bit. Let's just go chronologically, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
Let's do it.
Alright, so his first movie is technically the following. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, but I actually haven't seen this one.
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't even know that existed.
Okay, well let's just be generous and put it in B.
Sounds good.
Hang on, why are we putting it in B? If we've never seen it, shouldn't we be giving it the lowest possible rating?
It seems a bit unfair to give it an F, though. Given Nolan's track record, and the fact that this movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 84%, I think anything less than B doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was basically my thought as well.
Okay, whatever. This isn't the hill I'm gonna die on.
Next up is Memento. I thought this one was bloody fantastic. Not his best work, but I would honestly give it an A.
Now that's something I can agree with.
I would personally put this as S tier, but A is fine. The non-linear storytelling was very original and executed so well. It was such a clever way to get the audience to experience what it's like to not have a short-term memory.
Next up is Insomnia. I'm not gonna lie, this one really wasn't that great. The acting was good and it was a unique story, but I have no desire to watch it again.
It's lower tier for sure, but I would definitely watch this one again. I think it's one of those movies where successive viewings start to really grow on you.
Yeah, this one was fine, but it doesn't even feel like a Nolan movie.
Let's do C tier then. Next up is Batman Begins. I feel like this one really gets looked over and lives in the shadows of the other two movies in the trilogy, but it's honestly just a great superhero movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a classic origin story, but it was done very well.
Honestly, I totally disagree. This one gets looked over for a reason. It doesn't hold a candle to The Dark Knight because this one barely had any of the large-scale action sequences.
You have to look at this in context, Tim. The two previous Batman movies before this were terrible, so rebooting it with a relatively unknown director was a huge risk and not easy to pull off. I think that gives it some bonus points.
Can we agree on B tier? Alright, next one is The Prestige.
Now this one is actually underrated, and I think it's because it came out only a year after Batman Begins and just wasn't marketed well enough.
Yeah, I love this one too, but every Nolan fan I talk to says that it's underrated, which I think is a bit paradoxical. If everyone says it's underrated, can it actually be underrated?
Wow, mind blown.
It really wasn't that deep, but I get what he's saying. Is it safe to say that this is A tier?
I think so. Okay, next up is a big one, The Dark Knight.
Where do I even begin with this one? Excellent action sequences and one of the greatest villain performances of all time. I could write an entire dissertation on the Joker's social experiment with the two ships from a Catholic moral perspective, and that was only a small part of the movie. This one is definitely S tier.
And not to mention, this was the first Hollywood film to utilize IMAX film cameras. I never got to see it in that format, and it's one of my greatest regrets in life.
S tier it is. Okay, next one is also big. Inception. This one was bloody fantastic in my opinion, but I know that everyone likes this movie, so I'd like to hear if I'm being a normie for saying that.
It's true that basically everyone likes this movie, but that shouldn't change your opinion of it unless you're trying to be some sort of snob. Actually, I'd say the fact that an original sci-fi film was able to capture such a wide audience is part of what makes it such a good movie.
While IMAX cameras were not used in this film, I think the amazing score by Hans Zimmer more than makes up for that. This gets S tier because it's really the first film where we got to see how amazing Nolan and Zimmer are together.
Yeah, almost as good of a duo as TNT was. Sorry, I meant almost as good of a duo as Tim Gordon and David Gordon. Okay. Looks like I struck a nerve. Let's move on to The Dark Knight Rises.
I have a love-hate relationship with this one. This is a great Batman movie by any standard, but it fails to live up to The Dark Knight, and perhaps that's too high of a standard, but the gap is still significant. I don't think I can give this anything higher than an A, and honestly I'm leaning towards B due to some of the plot elements and lazy execution at times.
Yeah, for real. I mean, remember when he gave an explosive to John Blake and said count to 5 then throw, but if you actually time it, it explodes within 5 seconds of giving it to him, meaning that it would have blown him up if he had actually counted to 5 before throwing. And then that moment just ends up being pointless anyways because Batman blows away the debris with his bat plane.
And Talia's death scene was just atrocious. Part of me thinks that the filming for this was rushed or something, because I find it hard to believe that they did several takes, and that was the best one.
Don't even get me started on how it was literally impossible for Batman to have survived the atom bomb. They said earlier in the film that it has a 6-mile blast radius, and the timer only had about 30 seconds on it by the time he left city limits. So you're telling me he traveled 6 miles out into the water and then an additional 6 miles to escape the blast zone in only 30 seconds? Do you realize how fast he'd have to be moving?
Well, in fairness, he wouldn't actually have to travel 12 miles since he used gravity at his advantage. By dropping the bomb into the water, the bomb would continue to sink while he's simultaneously moving away from it. Plus, the 6-mile figure is probably not assuming that the bomb is underwater, which probably reduces the effect. And being within the blast radius doesn't mean you automatically die, it just means you're going to feel the shockwave. And something tells me that his suit and Batplane gives him pretty good odds.
Wow, okay, fair enough. But it's still a pretty good movie. And Nolan took IMAX to the next level by including over an hour of IMAX footage, which was completely unheard of at the time. B tier seems appropriate.
Man, Tim really loves IMAX. Too bad we don't have any IMAX screens here in Steubenville. All right, next up is Interstellar.